All right, Buckeyes fans, it's a Thursday night Buckeye Breakdown podcast tonight. And tonight, we're getting you set for a huge matchup down in Columbus on Saturday. And we're highlighting the Ohio State defense versus the Nebraska offense and how the Buckeyes are going to stop Nebraska on Saturday. Settle in for another great episode of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Buckeye Breakdown podcast. Anthony Moeglin alongside my partner, Kevin Woidke here. And tonight, we're previewing the Ohio State defense versus the Nebraska offense. And for Ohio State, they better get off to a better start than I did on this podcast. But, Kevin, it is so important for these Buckeyes who are coming off a really tough performance in Eugene a couple weeks ago to just right all their wrongs. Like, this defense is now a massive question mark, one that we didn't expect coming into this season, and one that's been in big moments, I guess in the biggest moment, kind of been a disappointment. So a huge matchup on Saturday for this Ohio State defense, and one that they got to be just really excited to get out on the field, get this horrible taste out of their mouth, and start proving to everybody that they're one of the best groups in all the country.
It was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call. That's what it was. That game, they weren't what they thought they were, both passing, getting to the passer type stuff. Everyone talked about how good they were all year, and they got complacent, it looked like, and it showed them, you know what? No, you guys are not as good as everyone said you were on paper, and it's time to really wake up, get ready, and start attacking people again.
And for these guys, man, this is a great opportunity to go against a team in Nebraska that's kind of reeling on the offensive side of the football. And it's a huge opportunity. Ohio State's defense has certainly been questioned, it has the finger pointed at them for these past couple weeks. And, man, we talked about it on Tuesday, Kevin, that bye week, you said it perfectly. Maybe this was a great punch in the mouth to these guys, but I just sit here thinking, man, these 2 weeks had to just absolutely suck, especially for this defense who, they were, you give up 32 points, it's going to be hard to win a lot of football games. And they just got to be chomping at the bit for this opportunity on Saturday.
Have to be. It's the only way to describe it.
No, it's going to be good. So before we get into previewing this Nebraska offense, Kevin and I, we were talking prior to our show here, and just kind of doing a quick look around of this national landscape, because yes, Ohio State's coming off that tough loss, but they're still certainly in the mix. And the nice part is they got a ton of opportunities within the Big Ten to reestablish themselves, and also the pressure is going to be turned up. This is a group that now you can't slip up again. You got a ton of tough matchups, but just looking at the AP top 10 as we enter into this week 8 here, and there's a couple matchups tonight, a couple huge matchups tomorrow, and then Saturday again filled with some awesome games. But you got Oregon going in at they're number 1 in both the AP and the coaches poll. Georgia bumps up to number 2 after their win over Texas, and then it's followed by Penn State, goes to Ohio State. Texas comes in at 5. Miami's number 6. Tennessee's number 7. LSU 8. Clemson 9. Iowa State 10. But what I will also add is that Indiana, we touched on them a little bit on our Tuesday show, but Indiana checks in at 13. And over the course of the next 4 weeks, you get 2 opportunities within the Big Ten to have top 10 victories. If Indiana keeps winning, they will be in the top 10 by the time you play them. And then Penn State, you're staring down the barrel of that gun, heading to Happy Valley next week for another potential top 5 matchup. So this stretch of games here for Ohio State as they kick off this back half of their season couldn't be more excited about the matchups, but also for Ohio State, you could look up in a couple weeks, the Buckeyes could be back to being number 1 in the country.
Yeah, and the other thing about the loss that's huge is, you don't have to be perfect anymore.
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to be perfect in college football anymore, but let alone just the Buckeyes looking at themselves like, all right, we don't have the pressure of being undefeated anymore. We can go out there and play.
That's another good point you make there, Kevin, because there is a lot of that. And for Ohio State's defense, as we kind of turn the page and kind of start talking about their defense specifically, because of that loss, I didn't even think of that until you just said it right there. Because of that loss, it takes that pressure of perfection off you. And that's in Columbus, right? This Buckeyes team, this Buckeyes defense was supposed to be the best thing since the 85 Bears, right? Everyone talked about them. It's a $20 million roster or $30 million roster, whatever the exact number is. But these guys all came to Ohio State to be the best defense in the country. They haven't shown it quite yet, but to your point, Kev, they haven't needed to, right? This is in this new age of college football. You get a couple opportunities. Your margin for error is much greater, and you can kind of get refocused like this. So for this defense, man, this is an awesome opportunity these next couple weeks to get right and get back to that national prominence.
Yep.
All right.
That's the only way to put it. That's the only way to put it. You summed it up perfectly.
All right. So let's talk a little Nebraska, because this group on that side that we're going to be facing, that's going to be coming into Columbus on Saturday, is a group that has certainly been on the roller coaster here. They started the year, all the hype in the world, right? You got Dylan Raiola coming in as this 5-star dude. Thinks he's Patrick Mahomes. You mentioned that you've been holding it back. We get to finally unleash you here, but thinks he's got the opportunity to be one of the potentially one of the greats, right? And that's what he's kind of been pitched as. And Matt Rule has been known to turn programs around and do so from an offensive perspective. And they get out to a really nice start. They beat the Colorado Buffaloes, and they're looking really, really good. And then they hit this lull where they get beat at home by Illinois in a great game, one that goes to overtime. It was a disappointing loss. And then over the course of the next 3 weeks, they score 28 points, 14 points, and then 7 points last week against Indiana. So they've certainly taken a massive step back from an offensive perspective. And, the Buckeyes are getting them kind of at the perfect time.
They are. I mean, Dylan Raiola, I mean, we're going to touch on him later. I mean, they've been up and down, but I think that the other thing they've been is, they've played some interesting teams where it's given them the opportunity to go up and down. They played Colorado, who, I mean, Colorado's not amazing when it comes to exceeding expectations. But, I mean, they played Illinois, they played Purdue, they played Rutgers, which are their 3, and Indiana, which are their 4 Big Ten teams. I just think that, it shows that they've been, up and down. And it's almost like they play to their level of competition, especially Raiola. I mean, he went almost 300 yards against Illinois and 250 against Purdue, and then 135. Like, it's just completely flip-flop, up and down. And that's kind of where it pivots to their receivers. And it's pretty evident that that's the case too. I mean, we could touch on the running game, which is what Nebraska's known for in the past, but their receivers with Raiola are who we're talking about now. And I mean, the one that kind of catches my eye a little bit more than the other, I know you want to talk about a couple people here. Jacoby Barney, like he's got 27 catches for only 181 yards. Like, he is their Cole Beasley. He is their surefire, short yardage, need to get the yards, throw to this guy. I doubt he's got top end speed, otherwise they'd have a lot more yards than that. But he also has no touchdowns. And that's just it. I think they have the weapons there. It's just the same thing that Tennessee is going through with oh gosh, I can't pronounce his last name. I call
Nico.
him
Just go Nico.
Nico, perfect. Where it's just inexperience. And that's what it is with Raiola, I think.
And that's a really good point too. And for these guys, like, yes, the expectations are so high, but you get into college football, and for the first time in a long time, Raiola specifically isn't the best player on the field, and that's certainly going to be the case on Saturday afternoon. And we saw a lot of it last week against Indiana. And when you really get into, kind of the nuts and bolts of that football game, yes, he threw for 234 yards, but he turned the ball over 3 times. And one of the things that we mentioned on our Tuesday show and why it was really tough for the Nebraska defense is that there was no complementary football being played. And by complementary football, the offense and defense have to be working together. And that doesn't mean the offense needs to score touchdowns on every drive. But what that does mean is that when the defense is struggling a little bit, maybe they give up a couple long drives or they're on the field for a long time, the offense has got to come to their aid and they have to stick to they have to put a drive together. And there was just none of that last week. They weren't able to establish the run. They were turning the ball over. They had a fumble and obviously 3 interceptions. And so they were just constantly getting off the field, putting their defense in bad spots. It is going to be a lot of that same case on Saturday. And for Nebraska, if I'm them, I'm trying to just establish a little bit of just establish some drives, right? Let's get into this game and let's not try to hit the home run ball. And I think that they get caught up in that just a little bit, but let's try to move the sticks a little bit, establish a few drives, and then just see what happens, right? We look back against Ohio State. They've not been great in the first quarter. Akron got after him a little bit in the first quarter. Western got after him a little bit in the first quarter. Marshall got after him in the first half, right? And Michigan State right down the field on their first drive in the first quarter. Obviously, Oregon, outside of their very first drive, their whole first quarter, they were just kind of going up and down the field. So I think if you're Nebraska on the offensive side, you're like, hey, let's try to establish the run and let's put a couple drives together, especially early on, just to not only establish some belief for you, but also establish some doubt in Ohio State's mind of like, here we go again. This is going to be, we're not just going to roll over. This is going to they're going to try to make this a long day, kind of for that Buckeye defense.
Yeah. And that's what it is. You need to give Raiola the confidence, and Ohio, I could totally see Ohio State coming into this game with their hair on fire.
Yeah.
And just running around and making plays almost to the point where they overplay it, where they jump a route so bad that they miss the catch and the receiver catches it for a 5-10 yard gain. Like, I could see them run around like this is going to be similar to the first game of the year again, where they're ready to go out and play around. That first drive is going to be interesting because I wouldn't be surprised if you see a late hit or a crazy tackle or something like that, just because that's what they're doing.
Yeah, and just an aggressive style, and a couple guys to kind of keep your eye out for when Nebraska has the football outside of the quarterback here in the backfield. Dante Dadwell is going to be their bell cow. He's going to wear number 23 on the season. He leads the team with 5 touchdowns on the ground and he's got 350 yards on 80 carries. So in that 4-ish yards per carry range, which is right where you kind of want to be. It's not great, but it's average, right? That's moving the sticks type of stuff. And that's kind of what they're going to be able to establish. On the outside of the guy you kind of mentioned, they got two dudes who are going to be physically taller. They're going to be the 2 biggest guys on the field in Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayer. Both guys stand at 6'4", 220 pounds. So these guys looked apart. They're going to be huge, and they're going to be a nice challenge for both Davis and Igbinosun and Denzel Burke on the outside, who both of those guys, need to show up. Denzel specifically needs to come out and play really well. But Jamal Banks, 23 catches for 316 yards and 2 scores. And then Nayer on the flip side, 19 catches for 304 yards and 4 scores. So not huge volume cats for either of those guys, not huge yardage guys for either of them, but both of them are end zone threats. When Nebraska does get into the red area, they're going to look to throw it up to their 2 tall guys. So those are going to be a couple guys to watch out for when Nebraska has the football, especially for this Ohio State defense. And getting to that Ohio State defense, they've Coach Day tried to kind of skirt around this injury that popped up during the bye week, but fifth-year safety Lathan Ransom did suffer an injury in the bye week. Now, the positive to this is that it's not a long-term injury. Coach Day did come out today and say that it is not a long-term situation, and he's truly taking it day by day for Latham. That's after starting the week kind of skirting around the question and not really providing much context behind it. But for Latham, a couple potential replacements for him. Malik Hartford, sophomore, Ohio kid in his second season with the Buckeyes, has only appeared in 3 games for Ohio State, is very inexperienced. And the other potential, Jalen McLean, two guys who Coach Day called out by name this week, said they're doing a really nice job in preparation. But McLean, a freshman from New Jersey, has appeared in 5 games this season. So a couple guys that could potentially mask that injury. But, Kevin, this Lathan injury, I preach about how this back end of this defense is kind of my favorite part of the defense and what really makes the engine go. This could prove to be pretty significant. Maybe not Saturday, but maybe in future games to come if this injury continues to linger.
Yeah, and I think it's a good way for Caleb to show how much of a leader he really is, because he's going to have a guy next to him. Yeah. He's not experienced. If Lathan is out for a long period of time, he's going to have a guy next to him who's inexperienced. He's going to be looking to him as his boulder to lean on, and that's that's what he needs. Whoever replaces Lathan, that's what they're going to need. And I think Caleb's a perfect guy for that. I mean, they talk about a professional and everything. That's where it's going to really show, like, okay, is it all talk or is he really a pro? Is he really going to go out there like Ed Reed did and help people?
Yeah. It's a great point you make, because he is fun. He flies around, he makes big plays. But like you said, Coach Day always talks about how advanced he is in his preparation and as advanced as he is in his just knowledge of the game and how he's really that coach on the field. So like you said, it's potentially time to, put your money where your mouth is. And I obviously have all the faith in the world that the kid can do that, but will be a really nice challenge for him. And you don't know, you really don't know. In college, you have these schools and these teams have the luxury of really protecting injuries. You don't have to tell anybody, the severity or even the type of injury. So if it is one that keeps him out for Penn State or getting into that Indiana, Michigan stretch, you never know, how important or how much of an impact a young guy like Hartford or like McLean are going to have to make and how significant they're going to have to be. So will be something to certainly kind of keep your eyes on here in the back end for the Buckeyes. So we touched on him a little bit. We didn't get too much into to Dylan Raiola, but this is a guy who we've all seen it, right? He said he wears number 15 because of Tim Tebow. You can buy that if you want to. You can throw that away. Dude dresses just like Patrick Mahomes, 5-star cat, committed to Georgia, committed to Ohio State, transferred to or decommitted to both of them. Ends up going to Nebraska. Kevin, what are your thoughts? It's not been a great start for him. He is a freshman. He is an 18-year-old kid. We've seen some guys that young have some success, but for him, it seems to have been a little up and down, and maybe the hype was a little too loud for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. He may not have made the best decision. I mean, if he goes to Nebraska and turns that program around, he's going to be a legend there forever. I mean, he's got 1,500 yards so far this year, but he's taken 14 sacks for, I mean, he's at negative 89 rushing yards with a 15-yard rush. So I don't know how bad his sacks are. I'm just saying that's his problem. Maybe he holds on to the ball too long. I haven't watched enough film to know. But when you're a young quarterback, whether it be in college or the NFL, the system you walk into and the people you're successful you are. I mean, you look at the Texans with C.J. Stroud. You look at, previous quarterbacks that have had unbelievable. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson. Like, he was surrounded by unbelievable players at every position, and then you just fit him in, who is maybe above average as a freshman that became elite as he kept growing. Dylan Raiola's got a much heavier climb ahead of him. And if there's anyone to emulate, it's absolutely Patrick Mahomes. But so far, he's holding the ball too long. I mean, he's 9 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's tough.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good perspective too, because like you said, that's a huge risk for a kid like that to take. And yes, he went there because his dad played there, and even his little brother's already committed to go to Nebraska. So you don't know if it's lip service. Like the truth of the matter is that these guys are independent contractors anymore. They could go, and he could redshirt the rest of the season and transfer, if he wanted to now. But if he does want to stick it out, that's the decision that a lot of these kids have to make when they are coming out of school. I mean, he very easily could have went to Georgia, maybe beat out Carson Beck, maybe competed with him, or maybe sat and waited. He could have came to Ohio State, done the same thing, could have gone to Texas, all of the things where he would have been, a name brand, but he goes and chooses to try to flip Nebraska around, and got the promise to start right away, and he did. And you see it, like it's definitely it thing is there. When he throws it, the ball jumps out of his hands. He's athletic as hell. But it takes some time sometimes for these young guys to get it going. And Kevin, like you mentioned, protecting a young quarterback like that is so critical, because a lot of the coverages they see are brand new. A lot of the blitzes they see are brand new, or maybe they're not new, but the speed is totally new to these guys. And if they are struggling up front, like 14 sacks through 7 games isn't all that bad. That's 2 a game. But, like you said, if they're huge number sacks, we were laughing, you and I were right before we started. It's like, yeah, he's got minus 89 yards rushing with a 15-yard carry. You do some quick math there. That's at least 104 yards worth of sacks. I don't know. And that's good math right there, partner. That's good stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's big time stuff. And anything they can do to help him out, they're not just quite gelling quite yet. And it's been kind of a frustrating start for the kid.
You just feel bad. You really do. And that's the only way to phrase it.
And maybe he flips it around, and maybe at some point it starts. Hopefully not this weekend down in Columbus. It certainly will be challenging. Kevin, like you mentioned, this group that the Buckeyes are going to have on Saturday, I'm excited to see what it looks like. They're going to come out hair on fire, flying around, trying to make it all happen. And maybe they do it, maybe there's a couple plays where they overdo it, right? They overcook something, and that's okay, because they got to be playing with a super sense of urgency and playing to make a huge statement, because they truly have to. So, Kevin, as we get into Saturday, what are some keys to the game for you on the defensive side of the football? Something that you're going to have your eye on when the Buckeyes defense is out on the field?
Rushing. I think pass rushing is one of, if not the most important thing this week. I mean, they're non-existent the last few weeks. I mean, Caden Curry had a sack, but then also got thrown out of the game for targeting. Like, I mean, it is it's the only thing to talk about. I mean, you put a lot of pressure on your DBs if you're not getting home to the quarterback. And not to say they didn't get the ball out quickly last week in Oregon. They did. But this kid's already got 14 sacks on the year. I don't know if it's an offensive line issue. If it is, then they've really got to get to him, because you need to rattle this young quarterback.
Yeah, and do so early. In my opinion, is get after him early in the football game. Cut the stuff that you give up drives in the first quarter, and you allow teams to kind of hang around. Like, show Ohio State what I want to see is them come out of the locker room and establish their will and really do it in a very physical way, because you come out, you can ruin this kid's day quickly. Like, if he gets out there and you force a turnover early, or you get him sacked and you get him backed up, and maybe you force a couple 3-and-outs, like, that'll kill his confidence. And the flip side is also true. If he goes down the field and puts a nice drive together and finishes with a nice touchdown, he's going to start believing in himself. And these kids are, especially these young dudes, like, they start getting hot, they're going to get hot. And you don't want that. That's a big problem that you just don't want to have. So for me, it's start fast for this Buckeye defense and get this crowd into it, because we're now, Kevin, not only is the urgency up for the team, the urgency is up for this fan base. And they're now getting excited to play teams at Ohio Stadium that aren't Akron, that aren't Marshall, that aren't Western. Like, these are big matchups. Come out, make big plays early, have a couple sacks early, and get this crowd going, and just shut the water off. Whether we like it or not, we're going to be compared to Indiana on Sunday morning. And if it's hopefully a good thing, but it also could be, if you give up 21 points to this Nebraska offense, it's not going to be feeling very good. So our 2 keys to the game: sack the quarterback, or release pressure the quarterback, and do it quickly. Get out of the gates really, really fast, and establish your will early. So, Kevin, before we get out of here, any final thoughts as we close the book on our weekly preview coverage of this game before we head into the weekend here?
Yep. Last thing, the dark horse. My dark horse pick for big game, not big game, but someone you got to keep an eye on. Their tight end is a house. 6'6", 255, the same size as that defensive lineman we talked about yesterday or Tuesday. But, I mean, he's got 20 receptions for 218 yards. He's not a slow guy. I mean, he's averaging 10 yards a reception. Like, that's something where if Raiola gets pressured and needs his safety blanket, I think that's going to be the guy, and that onus goes on to Cody Smith and Sonny Styles, or if we want to throw a safety on him, do that. But we got to do a better job of defending against the tight end, because that is a lot of these safety blankets that these coaches tell their quarterbacks, like, hey, this guy's bigger than everybody else out there. Just throw him the ball. You know, you got pressure. You don't know what to do. Cover downfield. Hit the tight end for a pass.
They say it often. Tight ends are a quarterback's best friend, and especially a young quarterback's best friend. We are going to have a tracker going forward on our shows here. Tight end mentions by Kevin, and we're on like episode 12 in a row here where we bring up the tight end because they're the best.
I can do it every single time.
We're tight end stands on this show, brother. This is a tight end friendly podcast. Come join in if you're a tight end out there. But everybody, appreciate you jumping in and hanging out with us tonight. We love bringing you this content and doing it live. So appreciate you jumping in. Feel free to subscribe to our channel. Like we said, we love bringing you content just like this, and we're going to have you covered all throughout the weekend here. We're going to be there on site on Saturday morning. We'll have a pregame show getting you set for the game to come. Then we'll be with you post-game. We'll have all the press conferences. We'll have all the player interviews, and then Kevin and I will be on to give you our thoughts on the game. And then on Sunday morning, we'll be back in the film room breaking down whatever it is that's going to happen on Saturday. So if you're into all that stuff, hit that subscribe button. Be alerted for when we do go live. If you're more into the written word, head over to our website, si.com/college/Ohio State. The link is at the bottom, which I did forget to put up. So sorry, Brennan. I will be hearing about that later. But si.com/college/Ohio State for all of our written content here. But for tonight, we appreciate you hanging out with us as we get you set for Ohio State's defense versus Nebraska's offense. And for that game that's coming your way on Saturday afternoon at noon Eastern down in Columbus at Ohio State. So appreciate you hanging out with us. And until next time, we go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. Is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.